Most men think women fall in love because of effort. They believe that if they stay loyal enough, available enough, patient enough, eventually she will feel deeply emotionally attached. But that is not how it works. I have seen men give a woman everything and still slowly disappear from her mind. And I have seen other men stay inside her thoughts for months without constantly chasing her. That difference matters more than most men ever realize. Because a woman does not emotionally attach herself deepest to the man who gives the most attention. She attaches herself to the man her mind keeps replaying when he is not there. The man who creates genuine emotional tension. The man who feels safe without feeling weak. The man who leaves her genuinely wondering instead of emotionally overfeeding her every moment of every day. This is Liza from Secrets Inside the Mind, and today I am breaking down the three biggest ways women actually think about men behind closed doors. Not the polite version people say in public. The real psychological version most men only learn after attraction has already quietly disappeared. Have you ever watched a woman slowly lose interest even though you treated her genuinely well? If you have, comment "I learned late" below. Because most men do not realize what went wrong until the relationship already feels cold and distant. One of the hardest truths for men to accept is this: being a good man does not automatically make you memorable. I know that sounds brutal, but you need to hear it clearly. A woman can appreciate your kindness, respect your loyalty, even admit you treated her better than anyone before, and still not feel deeply emotionally attached. Why? Because love is not just comfort. Love is mental replay. Women remember the men who stay active inside their minds, the men who create emotional movement, the men who make her feel curiosity, tension, anticipation, not chaos, not toxicity, emotional stimulation. A lot of men confuse being emotionally available with being emotionally impactful. Those are not the same thing. Some men become completely predictable inside relationships. Same texts, same reactions, same emotional pattern every single day. The woman already knows what he will say before he says it. She already knows he will always be there no matter how she behaves. And slowly, something dangerous happens. She stops emotionally reaching for him because mentally she already feels she has all of him. That is where attraction quietly begins to weaken. A woman can feel perfectly safe with you and still stop craving your presence. That is the part most men never understand until it is already too late. Because comfort alone does not create emotional intensity. Comfort without tension becomes routine. And routine rarely creates genuine obsession. I am not telling you to become toxic. I am not telling you to play games. I am telling you that emotional certainty kills curiosity when there is nothing else supporting attraction underneath it. The men women struggle hardest to forget usually have one thing in common. They made her feel emotionally engaged. She kept thinking about them after conversations ended. She kept replaying specific moments in her head. She kept genuinely wondering where she stood with him. And that wondering matters more than most men realize. Because the moment a woman stops mentally reaching for you, the emotional distance often begins long before any physical distance ever appears. Now let us talk about the mistake that destroys attraction faster than almost anything else: emotional overexposure. This is where many men lose a woman completely without ever understanding why. They think love means constantly proving themselves, constant texting, constant reassurance, constant emotional availability. They believe if they explain their feelings enough, she will finally feel secure enough to love them deeply. But what usually happens is the exact opposite. The moment a woman feels she completely owns your emotional world, part of the tension disappears. She stops wondering about you because there is nothing left to discover. You answered every question before she even had the chance to ask it. Some men reveal everything too early: their fears, their desperation, their attachment, their need for validation. And at first, the woman may respond positively. She may even call it sweet. But deep inside, something starts changing psychologically. She no longer feels like she is experiencing a strong man with genuine emotional control. She starts feeling like she is carrying the emotional weight of someone who cannot regulate himself without her constant attention. That feeling slowly and quietly kills desire. A woman wants emotional connection, absolutely, but she also wants to feel that your life still belongs to you, that your emotions are not collapsing every time she becomes slightly distant for a few hours, that your sense of identity still exists outside of her approval. This is why desperation creates the worst kind of safety. Not peaceful safety, but careless safety. The moment she feels you will tolerate anything just to keep her, the emotional challenge disappears. She no longer feels she could lose you. And when there is no genuine possibility of loss, people stop valuing what they already have. You see this pattern constantly. A man starts over-explaining himself every time she pulls back slightly. He sends paragraphs trying to repair tension immediately. He reacts emotionally to every single mood shift she has. He watches his phone constantly waiting for replies, like his emotional stability depends entirely on them. Women notice that behavior faster than men think. And the dangerous part? Most women will not directly tell you this reduced their attraction. They will simply start responding differently. Less curiosity, less excitement, less emotional energy, less genuine effort. Then the confused man says he gave her everything, and that is exactly the problem. He gave everything before she had the chance to emotionally invest enough to genuinely value it. The answer is not becoming cold or emotionally unavailable. Some men hear this message and swing to the opposite extreme. They ignore women on purpose, disappear randomly, act emotionally distant, and call it masculine energy. That is insecurity wearing confidence as a costume. Real emotional control is quieter than that. A strong man can care deeply without emotionally collapsing. He can show genuine affection without surrendering his self-respect. He can love a woman without making her the center of his psychological survival. And that balance is genuinely rare. Subscribe right now if you want to understand female psychology at the level that actually changes your outcomes in relationships. Because what I am about to share next is where most men make their most expensive mistake. Women think more deeply about the men they cannot fully predict emotionally. Not because women enjoy confusion, but because the human mind becomes genuinely attached to what feels emotionally unfinished. Think about it carefully. The conversations you replay most in your own head are usually the ones that left emotional residue behind. Something unresolved, something uncertain, something you are still trying to fully understand. Women experience this in exactly the same way. This is why genuine curiosity becomes so powerful in attraction. A woman wants to feel your attention. She wants to feel desired. She wants real emotional warmth. But she also wants to feel that there are parts of you she is still genuinely discovering over time. Not secrets, not manipulation, depth. There is a major psychological difference between those two things. Some men become emotionally naked too quickly. Within weeks, the woman already knows exactly how emotionally attached he is, exactly how available he is, exactly how dependent he has become. There is no tension remaining because he handed her the entire emotional map before the connection had room to naturally develop. But the man who creates genuine emotional pull moves differently. He is attentive without hovering, caring without begging, present without emotionally chasing. He gives her enough emotional reassurance to feel safe, but not so much that she feels she completely controls his inner world. A woman becomes emotionally engaged when she starts asking herself real questions about you. How much does he actually care? Why do I feel calm around him but still slightly uncertain? Why does he seem emotionally grounded even when I pull back slightly? Why do I keep thinking about him after conversations end? That mental replay creates attachment. The mistake most men make is trying to eliminate uncertainty too quickly because uncertainty makes them personally uncomfortable. So they overshare, they overpursue, they overexplain, they try to force emotional clarity into every moment of the relationship. But attraction rarely grows inside emotional overexposure. Mystery does not mean becoming emotionally unavailable. It means allowing attraction to breathe instead of suffocating it with constant emotional pressure. People obsess over what feels emotionally unfinished. That is fundamental human nature. And when a woman feels emotionally safe with you while still sensing there is more to discover, her mind keeps returning to you when you are gone. She starts replaying your words, your energy, your reactions, your absence. That is when attraction stops being surface level and becomes genuinely psychological. Have you ever noticed someone wanting you more after you stopped over-explaining yourself constantly? Comment mystery matters below if you experience that specific shift, because what keeps a woman emotionally attached is not constant emotional flooding. It is consistent emotional engagement. Now, here is where many men completely misunderstand female psychology. Women want emotional safety, but they do not want emotional ownership over a man too easily. That distinction changes everything. A woman wants genuine consistency. She wants emotional steadiness. She wants to know you will not disappear every time life becomes difficult. But simultaneously, she wants to feel that you still belong to yourself. The moment a man starts revolving his entire identity around a woman, attraction slowly begins weakening. Not always immediately. Sometimes it happens quietly over months. But eventually she starts feeling the imbalance. He cancels his plans every time she calls. He abandons his priorities the second she wants attention. His mood depends entirely on her reactions. If she becomes distant, he becomes visibly anxious. If she sounds slightly cold, he loses emotional control. His entire emotional system starts orbiting around her validation. At first, she may genuinely enjoy the attention. Most people enjoy feeling important. But over time, it stops feeling masculine. It starts feeling emotionally heavy. A woman wants to feel chosen, not worshipped. That psychological distinction matters more than most men ever realize. This is why fake alpha behavior also consistently fails. Some men notice women losing attraction and overcorrect dramatically. Suddenly they become emotionally cold. They ignore messages deliberately. They act busy to create artificial scarcity. But coldness is not confidence. Emotional punishment is not genuine strength. A man who constantly plays control games reveals insecurity faster than confidence. Real masculine presence feels entirely different. Calm, grounded, emotionally disciplined. A strong man does not need to constantly prove he has power over a woman because his life already has genuine direction outside the relationship. He can give real attention without losing himself. He can care deeply without becoming emotionally dependent. He can love without surrendering his emotional center. And women feel safer with that kind of man because his stability does not look fragile. A woman should feel emotionally safe with you, but she should never feel like your entire life pauses every time she enters the room, because once your entire identity becomes attached to her attention, she unconsciously starts carrying pressure she never wanted. She stops feeling emotionally drawn toward you and starts feeling emotionally responsible for you. That shift quietly kills attraction more reliably than almost anything else. The men women stay emotionally attached to long-term are almost always the men who remain emotionally grounded under pressure. Men who are warm without becoming weak, focused without becoming controlling, caring without emotionally surrendering themselves completely. Like this video, if these psychological insights are giving you genuine clarity about your own relationship patterns. And let us talk now about where this becomes even more critical. Most men think attraction grows through constant access. More texts, more calls, more time together, more attention every hour of the day. But emotional impact is not created through constant availability. It is created through emotional quality. A woman remembers how she feels around you. That feeling matters more than how many hours you spent talking to her. This is why some men can spend every single day around a woman and still slowly become emotionally invisible. Their presence becomes predictable, repetitive, emotionally flat. There is no contrast anymore, no emotional imprint, no space for genuine anticipation. And once something becomes emotionally ordinary, the brain stops reacting to it with the same intensity. A man who understands this knows that presence only matters when it carries genuine emotional weight. When you are with her, actually be with her, not distracted, not emotionally scattered. Give her your attention with real intention. Make her feel your emotional presence clearly and completely. But after that moment ends, return to your actual life. That is where attraction breathes. A man who always drops everything to constantly entertain a woman eventually trains her to see his attention as unlimited. And people rarely value what feels unlimited. What becomes constantly available stops feeling emotionally expensive. Some women will not consciously admit this, but emotionally, they start responding differently when a man becomes too accessible. His attention no longer feels special. His presence no longer creates anticipation. She starts assuming he will always be there, regardless of how little effort she gives back. And the emotional dynamic quietly shifts against him. I am not telling you to ignore women to create artificial value. Forced distance is easy to spot, and women are not fooled by it. The difference is emotional purpose. A genuinely grounded man has real direction outside the relationship. His world does not shrink every time attraction appears. So when he gives attention, it feels intentional rather than desperate. And women feel that distinction immediately. If your presence feels warm, calm, focused, and emotionally engaging, your absence starts carrying genuine emotional weight afterward. She replays moments with you. She misses your specific energy. She thinks about how different she felt around you compared to everyone else. But if your presence feels needy, emotionally draining, or overly available, your absence does not create longing. It creates relief. That is the brutal psychological truth many men never see coming. Now we need to talk about the dimension many men avoid because it creates genuine discomfort. Physical intimacy. A woman remembers how you make her feel physically far longer than most men realize. And I am not talking about performance in the way insecure men obsess over it. I am talking about the emotional experience of physical connection. Because intimacy exposes things that words genuinely cannot hide. Your confidence shows there. Your patience shows there. Your emotional awareness shows there. Even your insecurity shows there. And women notice all of it with precision. A woman can love your personality, appreciate your loyalty, enjoy your company, and still slowly disconnect emotionally if physical intimacy starts feeling empty, rushed, repetitive, or emotionally disconnected. This is where many relationships quietly begin dying without the man having any awareness of it. He assumes everything is fine because she is still physically present. She still answers messages. She still stays in the relationship. But emotionally, desire already started weakening months earlier, and desire rarely dies loudly. It dies through repetition without genuine emotional connection. Some men approach intimacy with the emotional awareness of someone far younger. They rush, they focus on themselves, they stop paying attention to her actual emotional responses. They assume silence means satisfaction. They repeat the same patterns while expecting the same emotional excitement to continue indefinitely. That mindset destroys attraction in a way that is almost impossible to reverse once it has gone far enough. A woman remembers whether you paid genuine attention to her comfort, whether you noticed her real reactions, whether she felt emotionally safe opening herself to you, whether intimacy felt emotionally connected or emotionally mechanical. And most women will not directly explain every detail of their emotional dissatisfaction. Instead, behavior changes first. She becomes less enthusiastic, less affectionate, less playful. Physical intimacy slowly begins feeling like obligation rather than genuine desire. Once intimacy becomes something she tolerates rather than craves, emotional distance quietly enters every other dimension of the relationship. She may still love you as a person while no longer feeling emotionally pulled toward you as a man. And many men completely miss these warning signs because they think attraction disappears through one big dramatic event. Usually, it does not. Usually, it fades through emotional neglect repeated quietly over months. Real masculine intimacy is emotional awareness combined with genuine emotional control. A woman remembers the man who made her feel emotionally understood during physical closeness. The man who stayed calm, present, attentive, confident. The man who made intimacy feel emotionally safe rather than emotionally pressured, because physical intimacy creates emotional memory. And emotional memory decides whether she keeps mentally returning to you or slowly starts emotionally withdrawing while pretending everything is still perfectly normal. Here is the part most men never notice until it is already too late. Attraction usually does not die in one dramatic moment. It dies quietly. A woman rarely wakes up one morning and suddenly stops feeling emotionally attached. Most of the time, the emotional disconnect happens gradually through small changes, small withdrawals, small moments where desire stops growing and slowly starts fading instead. And men ignore the signs because the relationship still technically exists. She still replies, she still comes home. But emotionally, something fundamental feels different. Many men respond to this the worst possible way. They panic. Suddenly, they overchase, overshare, overreact. They try to force the old emotional connection back through pressure rather than understanding what actually changed underneath the surface. But attraction does not return through emotional desperation. It returns when the genuine emotional experience changes again. A woman can stay physically beside you while emotionally leaving you in complete silence. That is why some endings seem to come out of nowhere for men. In reality, the emotional distance started long before any conversation about it ever happened. He simply ignored the smaller warning signs because he assumed her staying meant attraction was still alive. But tolerated intimacy and genuinely desired intimacy are completely different psychological experiences. Comment below right now with what you believe destroys attraction fastest in modern relationships. Your answer may give another man the psychological clarity he needs before he loses someone he still believes is fully emotionally connected to him. The men women struggle hardest to forget consistently create four things: emotional tension, emotional safety, genuine emotional presence, and emotional memory. Not manipulation, not toxic games, emotional impact. The man she keeps replaying in her mind becomes difficult to emotionally replace because part of her psychology remains genuinely attached to the emotional experience he created inside her. Women do not stay emotionally attached simply because you are good to them. They stay emotionally attached because being with you continues to feel emotionally alive inside their minds long after you leave the room. Women do not emotionally attach themselves deepest to the man who gives the most attention. They attach themselves deepest to the man who creates genuine emotional impact. That is the difference most men learn far too late. A woman keeps thinking about the man who feels emotionally grounded, the man who cares without emotionally begging, the man who gives attention without abandoning his purpose, the man who makes her feel emotionally safe without making himself emotionally weak, the man who creates moments she keeps genuinely replaying long after he is gone. Because attraction is psychological before it ever becomes emotional. None of this is about manipulation. None of this is about becoming toxic, cold, or emotionally unavailable. Real masculine strength is emotional discipline. It is knowing how to love a woman without losing yourself inside her approval. That is the balance women feel immediately when they are in the presence of a man who has genuinely built it. Subscribe right now because most men are taught how to chase women, but almost nobody teaches men how women actually think behind closed doors. And that knowledge, the real psychological understanding of what creates lasting emotional attachment, is what changes everything about how you show up in every relationship in your life. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.